1 month, folks. No advertising. Because it deals with the Muslim and communist infiltration of your government. And in there you'll see Andre Carson of Indiana, one of your 3 Muslim Congress members. And he gets up in front of this Muslim Brotherhood front group in Connecticut in 2012, and he's got a big grin on his face, and he says, "People, I've been told we have somebody infiltrating us here today. Somebody is here spying on us because they believe we are here plotting to destroy this country." And then he grins and he says, "Well, I say to you spies, Allah will not allow you to stop us." This guy serves on the Intelligence Committee, people. He oversees the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, the DEA, all 16 of your intelligence agencies. Also on that committee is Jim Himes from Connecticut, who is very actively involved with the Communist Party in Connecticut. There's also there's about 4 Marxists on the Intelligence Committee. There's at least 4 on the Homeland Security Committee, at least 4 on the Armed Services Committee. There are at least 100 members of your House right now who are so involved in communist groups, working with the Cubans, the Chinese, or getting money from the Iranians, that they couldn't pass an FBI background check to drive a Hernando County school bus. They wouldn't be allowed to sell, nor could Obama, they wouldn't be allowed to sell postage stamps at your local post office. Yet they are running the Homeland Security Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Intelligence Committee, the Education Committee, and the Judiciary Committee. All of them. Give you another example in the Senate. There's a woman called Tammy Baldwin from Wisconsin. She wants to be president one day. And the sheriff might be, we might know this. Is there any drugs in Hernando County? Any opiates? Right?
Too many.
Too many. Well, the fentanyl comes from China through Mexico. The Chinese are killing 50,000 Americans a year right now. We're already at war with China, people. We've got to understand that. But the cocaine mainly comes from Colombia. And most of that is produced by the FARC. The communist guerrillas have been fighting a war against the Colombian government for 50 years now. They call them narco-terrorists because they make their money selling cocaine to the cartels who then sell it to your kids. Now in Madison, Wisconsin, where Tammy Baldwin comes from, there's a Colombia support network. And that network supports the Colombian revolutionaries. And Tammy Baldwin has been a member of it since 1993. She's gone down to Colombia to work with these people. She has staff, some of her staff work with this group. She was on their executive committee for a while. And she has used her position in your Congress on several occasions to try and get US military aid cut off to the Colombian government so the communists can more easily take over that country so they can sell even more cocaine to your young people. You have got at least 20 members of the US Senate, including Schumer, including Dianne Feinstein, who couldn't pass any form of background check whatsoever. And neither could Adam Schiff, by the way. He is working with the Chinese like you wouldn't believe, and he gets money from the Iranians. Would that surprise you? No. So what I'm saying is, a quarter of your House and a quarter of the Senate are basically working for the other side, folks. That is why you had a nuclear deal with Iran. The Iranians got that. That's why you have open borders. That's why you have Obamacare pushed down your throat. That's why you couldn't drill your own oil for so many years. That's why you have all these oppressive regulations. Because a quarter of your House, including all of the leaders, are working for the other team. And the situation is very similar in the US Senate. And just while we're on the subject of open borders, now, I regard illegal immigration apart from your treasonous congressman, illegal immigration is your #1 national security threat. And it's real simple, folks. Very simple math. And I did math before Common Core, so I'm very confident of my addition, okay? And actually did it in a country where they didn't even have Common Core then. Now, according to Massachusetts Institute of Technology, there are 22 million illegals in this country right now. Some people say it's more like 45 million. They've been telling us 11 million for decades. We'll go with 22. MIT's pretty reputable. Now, if those people were all given citizenship and voting rights, as Hillary Clinton promised to do within 100 days of taking office, which proportion of them do you think would vote Democrat?
100%.
Let's just go with 80%. Be really, really conservative. It probably is 95%, you know, or more. So at 22 million of them, 80% of that, you're looking at least 16 or 17 million new voters, right? Democratic voters. Now, Mitt Romney lost his election by 2.5 million votes. Donald Trump, thanks to the wisdom of your founding fathers and the Electoral College, won by about 300,000 votes nationwide and actually lost the popular vote by 3 million. What do you think's going to happen when the next Democrat president legalizes 22 million illegals, folks? You will lose Florida, you will lose Texas, you will lose Georgia, you will lose North Carolina, you will lose Arizona straight off. How will you ever elect another Republican or Conservative president from that point? How will you do it, folks? Why do you think the Democrats are so hell-bent on keeping that border open? I guarantee you this, if most of those illegal immigrants voted Republican, Obama would have had the biggest wall on the border you have ever seen. It's all about the votes. You are that close on election night 2016, people, that close to losing your country forever. And I still don't think most of the Republican leadership has any idea of the stakes they are playing with here. I think Trump certainly does, but most of the rest of them have no idea. They're in the pocket of the Chamber of Commerce. They want cheap labour. They're as keen to keep the borders open as most of the Democrats are, just for different reasons. We are hanging on by a thread, people. One bad election and we're in huge trouble. Huge trouble. Now, why do you think they hate Trump so much, people? Has anybody seen as much vitriol and contempt directed at a sitting president as this one in your lifetimes? Reagan, Bush, was never this bad, was it? There's two reasons, I think. One of them, very simple, the Democrats are so fired up with their own propaganda on election night, so believing their own BS, that when it all turned bad, they were like a bunch of kids who thought they were going to get the biggest bike you've ever seen for Christmas, and they got a pair of socks. And they're bitter. You know, but we normally move on after a year or two after that, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? But they're doubling down, because this is the real reason. Because they understand it's either Trump or them. Because, see, if you're a Democrat, you own the minorities, right? You own the black population. You own the soccer moms. You own the millennials. You own the Native Americans, the Asian Americans. And you add all these minorities up until you get 51%. That's how you win. So, and you own those white union guys out in Pennsylvania and Ohio. You own them. So when President Trump goes out to Pennsylvania and Ohio, it says, so where's all these factories, guys? Where's all these steel mills and these high-paying union jobs you used to have here? Where have they all gone? Is this what voting Democrat and NAFTA has done for you? And he says, well, you cannot defend your country without an industrial base. We're going to rebuild industry in this country. We're going to rebuild American jobs. Are you with me? And for the first time in their lives, hundreds of thousands of those white union guys went down to the local hall and they ticked the box for a Republican.
Yay.
And that's freaking the Democrats out, people. That's horrific for them. Now, the black population, 90% at least normally votes Democrat. So President Trump goes to them and says, guys, I look at your inner cities. They're hellholes. Unemployment, fatherlessness, drugs, crime. You're all run by Democrats, right? How has this done you any good? Why don't you vote for me? What have you got to lose? And a whole bunch of them said, heck yeah, and they did. The reason Trump won Michigan by 10,000 votes is because instead of 96% of the black population voting Democrat, only 92% did. His approval rating amongst black males now is 35%, people. You haven't seen that since Abraham Lincoln. That is freaking the Democrats out, because this is their base. This is the people they rely on, they take for granted, they don't have to fight for. And it's freaking them. You see, if the money keeps flowing, if the border wall gets built, if President Trump can stem the flow of drugs, if he can keep the oil fields opening, you're energy independent now, people. First time in how many years? That's fantastic. You know, you don't have to rely on communists in Venezuela and the Saudis anymore for your oil. He's done that by opening up your fields. If he can keep that going, keep the taxes coming down, keep the regulations coming off business. Has anybody noticed the difference between the Trump economy and the Obama economy?
Absolutely.
At all?
Yeah.
Sorry about this. I thought I'd turn my phone off.
Your fault.
Yeah, my phone. I thought I'd turn it off. You know, so you project that back forward a few years, folks. You imagine how different this country could be. And you imagine what position that'll put the Democrats in. All they got to run on is race, people. They haven't got the economy to run on. They haven't got education to run on or anything like that. It's all about race. Which brings me to another reiteration of the point that Donald Trump Jr. made. Just briefly look at the field that we've got in front of us. The front runner, Joe Biden, okay? He is the moderate of the bunch. He's the old blue-collar Democrat, so he keeps telling us. Absolute garbage, people. He was elected in 1972 by an organisation set up by a known KGB agent, a Soviet agent. It was called the Council for a Livable World. They came into Delaware. He was a 29-year-old city councillor running against a 4-term incumbent senator with a 60% approval rating. And with this money he got and the backing he got from the Council for a Livable World, he won. And the condition was, Mr. Biden, you have to work to disarm the United States. It was a group set up by the Soviets to fund senators. They funded over 200 of them since they started, to disarm the United States. So the Soviet Union and Russia would have an advantage over this country. He was actually given this money through a man called Al Gore Sr. You might have heard of his son, the man who invented the internet and global warming.
Yeah.
Okay? Well, Al Gore Sr. was a protege, was the secretary or president of the Council for a Livable World at the time, and he was the protege of a man called Armand Hammer, perhaps one of the most famous Soviet agents of the 20th century, the man who kept the Bolshevik Revolution alive, a friend of Lenin, made millions of dollars, set up Occidental Petroleum as a Soviet agent. And this is the man who mentored Al Gore Sr. And Biden has worked to disarm the United States, to cut weapons programs, to negotiate bad treaties with Moscow, to basically downgrade the US military his entire political career. He boasts about it in my movie. We've got him on tape saying he worked with the Council for a Livable World his entire career. They even helped him negotiate the START treaty with Russia about 4 years ago. that gave huge advantages to Moscow and basically decimated your military advantage over them. Joe Biden is a complete and utter traitor, people. Complete and utter traitor. And he is the moderate. Next one down the totem pole, Elizabeth Warren. There's a little Indian joke there, by the way. Just think about that. Elizabeth Warren works with two communist groups in Massachusetts. The Liberation Road, which is pro-Chinese, very in with them, and Democratic Socialists of America, which has connections to European and Latin American communists. She's been working with them for years, folks. She puts their people on her staff. She follows their programs. She keynoted in 2012 the awards-giving ceremony at the Midwest Academy in Chicago, the Saul Alinsky Communist Training School in Chicago. She is a complete Marxist, folks. Next one down, Bernie Sanders. The only thing I'll say about Bernie, people say, oh no, he's an honest socialist. No, he's not. He's a hardcore Marxist-Leninist. He's worked with the Cubans, he's worked with the Nicaraguans, he's worked with he honeymooned in the Soviet Union people. You know, he has worked, his whole backbone of his campaign is the Communist Party USA and Democratic Socialists of America. He would be nothing without them. They elected him to Congress, they elected him to the Senate, and they almost got him into the presidency. He is hardcore. Next one down, Pete Buttigieg, right? Sensible Pete, little guy from Indiana, right? What a cute guy he is, you know, and he's so sensible. Has anybody heard of Antonio Gramsci? He was the theoretician of the Italian Communist Party who died in Mussolini's prison. Now Gramsci he wrote these famous prison notebooks, and they are the Bible of America's communist movement. All over the world they're the Bible. He's taken the place of Lenin as the leading communist theoretician. Because Lenin said you have a revolution because the workers will rise up and overthrow the capitalists, right? Well, that didn't work in America because anybody can be poor as anything and end up a millionaire. You're not defined by your class in America. So they had to be more subtle about it. So Gramsci said this: the reason the workers don't rise up, they've been indoctrinated for years by the church, by education, by civil society to support the status quo. We have to get our communists into the churches. We get our communists into education. We get our communists into Hollywood, the media, civil society, and we change the consciousness of the people. Why do 60% of American kids now identify as socialists? Because of Antonio Gramsci. He has been so indoctrinating through their churches, their schools. They think like socialists now. They don't even know what they are, but they think they're socialists. Well, Gramsci, the leading Gramsci scholar in this country, the head of the World Gramsci Society, was a man called Joseph Buttigieg, Pete's dad. What do you think they talked about over the breakfast table, people? Pete Buttigieg was on the Democratic Socialists of America as a Gramsciist organisation. Pete was on their mailing list as a teenager. He won a national essay competition as a teenager in 2000. Steve Phillips and George Soros tells them where to put it. And they are targeting your state like you wouldn't believe. They're targeting Georgia and North Carolina and Arizona and Texas. And they only need to flip one or two of those states, people, and you're in trouble. And you're right on the edge of the I-4 corridor. You're in the most critical part of the most critical state in the whole country. Right now. And I'm not trying to put a big responsibility trip on you folks, but the future of Western civilization depends on you. Okay? It does. It actually does. Now, so, if I thought there was no hope for America, I'd be back in my beautiful New Zealand right now, building bunkers and stocking up on baked beans. What is baked beans, by the way? But I think there's huge hope for this country. Because after all they threw at your president, you still elected him. After all they're throwing at him now, you're still supporting him. And his support is growing. The more they try and impeach him, the higher the support rises. Right?
Yes.
Yep.
So there's a huge amount of hope. Now and I want to say this, look, has anybody seen a president keep as many of his promises as this one?
No.
With all he's had against him. Betrayal by the Republicans, the Democrats on his case 24/7, the media on his case, Hollywood on his case, everybody on his case, and look what he's got done. Well, you imagine when he gets re-elected and he takes back the House and he gets an increased majority in the Senate, so he doesn't have to rely on Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, who are basically Democrats.
Right.
He's got the presidency, the House and the Senate. He will be unleashed, people.
Yeah.
And that's when we got to start pushing to do things like abolish the Department of Education so you can educate your kids in Florida values. Keep those taxes coming down. Pull America out of the United Nations. All of these things that could be done. But this is the big one, I think. Now, one of the things that's, President Trump's had a lot of trouble with some of the courts. He'll make a decision and some idiot in the Ninth Circuit in San Francisco will say, no, you can't do that. And it holds the whole country to ransom. Well, President Trump has done more to appoint conservative judges than any other. Even the Ninth Circuit now is almost conservative. You imagine what he can do with another 4 years. He will transform the judiciary of this country, which will have huge implications for your gun rights, your religious liberties, your freedom of speech, business regulation, education, you name it. But the Supreme Court is the big one. Now, for 60 years, the left have controlled the Supreme Court. And they make a bad decision, and they call that precedent, then they put another bad decision on top of that, and another one on top of that. So now 70% of what your federal government does is probably unconstitutional. And I cannot understand how America does as well as it does with the weight that you have on you. You know, the things they've done to suppress your religious liberties, your businesses, the taxes and regulations, all because the Supreme Court is being controlled by the left and basically disregards the Constitution. Well, right now, because of President Trump, finally, we have a majority on the Supreme Court, a 5-4 majority. And I know Roberts is a flake. You don't have to tell me that. But at least he votes our way more often than not. Trump has got money for the wall. The Janus decisions come down. Several good decisions have come down. But this is it. President Trump gets re-elected in 2020, right? Ruth Bader Ginsburg is getting pretty old.
Yes.
Her health is not great. 5 years from now, think about this. She has publicly said she would love to go and retire in New Zealand. Okay? Okay? Well, I'm willing to take one for the team, folks. She can come down to beautiful New Zealand, she can play bingo all day long, and you will have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court. Imagine what that will do for your religious liberties, your Second Amendment rights. Imagine how this will transform your country, folks. And it's this far away from getting. All those things conservatives have been working for years, that have been pushed.
Yes.
They will be out of office, they'll be split, they'll be divided, they'll probably split into 2 or 3 parties. They'll be out of your hair for 20 years, folks.
Thank you.
Their day will be done. But there's no rat like a cornered rat, people. That's why they have to destroy the president. There's nothing off the table. No dirty trick. Nothing at all. And like George Washington in the Revolutionary War, folks, he didn't fight that war all alone. He had an army behind him. And look what he gave you. Look at the amazing country you were given because of those brave revolutionary soldiers. And people, they didn't get home to go and watch TV at night. They didn't get to go down and have, barbecue for dinner or whatever, or go fishing on the Gulf. They were trudging through the snow, dodging British bullets, eating berries to survive for year after year after year. And they were almost done. They were almost defeated. Then George Washington got down on his knees and he prayed at Valley Forge, folks. And he got up and he went on to take the British out in a surprise attack at Yorktown, and he turned the course of the war. Not just the war, people, human history. Imagine how this planet would have been for the last 200 years without America. What a dark hellhole it would have been, folks. All because your ancestors stood up. Well, I know what you guys do, folks. I know you're writing out checks, you're delivering leaflets, you're knocking on doors, you're phone banking, year after year after year with no thanks, all because you love your country and you love your kids.
Amen.
That's the reason, is it not?
Yes.
And you're doing that, and I'm asking you right now, for the next year, double down. This is the time. What you do in this area in the next few months will have more impact on your children's future, the future of this country, the future of the Western world, than any time in your lives. It's right here. We lose the next election, folks. It's grim. But we win it. We're on a positive cycle that could go on for decades. We could transform this nation and the Western world. Don't you think that New Zealanders want to be free, and the Australians and the French and the Germans? Well, America gets free, they will get free. America goes down, we all go down, folks. We all go down. So this is critical. What we do here, you're right in the most strategic part of the country, folks. The door knocking you do here, the phone banking you do here, even if it's out of county, it's going to counteract those idiots over in Broward and Dade and all those people, folks. Trump needs this area. Absolutely. So I don't want to hear any talk about holidays next year in the Caribbean, or, going hunting in Wyoming or whatever. This is the time to be on the phone banks, the door knocking. If you're going to write out a $500 check to Trump, make it $1,000. Whatever you have to do, this is the time to double down. I can't promise you much, folks, but I can promise you two things. If we blow this God-given opportunity, folks, our children will live in slavery. But if we double down and give it everything that's within us for our God, our Constitution, and our families, two things may happen. One, conceivably we may do everything we can and maybe we still lose. That is always a possibility. But at least you will all earn the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I possibly could for you. What's that worth to you people?
Everything.
And if you win, and you absolutely can win this, that 2016 election convinced me that God is not finished with this country yet, folks. If you win this, you will spark an economic boom like you've never seen. You'll spark a liberty revolution that will go on for decades, if not hundreds of years. And you will give your children and grandchildren the ability to live in not just the amazing country that you inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth fighting for?
Yes.
So I want to say to you folks, thank you so much for what you do for America and for my country and for liberty. God bless America, and God bless President Trump, and God bless you all. Thank you. Well, I'm in Florida for the next year at least, right up till the election. I'm speaking pretty much to Trump clubs, Republican clubs, Tea Party groups all over the state. So,
Do you have a schedule on the web or anything?
look, I've been reluctant to put it on the web because you get Antifa people turning up sometimes. But look, it will be advertised, you know, through this group and others. I've already lined up to speak to several Trump clubs. I'm down in Sarasota next month, and down in Venice next month. No doubt I'll be speaking around here again too.
Who pays for your bed and breakfast?
What I sell.
Yeah.
And I have to compliment you and Dinesh. Neither of you are Americans, yet you come as foreigners to our country and put us to shame that you know more than we do about what's going on in this nation.
Well, I make it my business to, but Antoinette and Lex will tell you, when you live in a socialist country and you don't even know it's socialist, and you come to a freer country, you appreciate it. You really, and I'm not knocking my country, it's a fantastic country, but the people there don't know they're socialists.
No.
And it makes it hard to make a living, and it makes it hard to, you can't have guns there, you can't, there's a whole lot of freedoms that are denied to us.
I didn't know New Zealand was socialist.
It is very
Look, our
bad.
Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, is a Marxist.
The left
She
is
is,
lying
it's-
to you on
it's
TV.
terrible.
They want to
Yeah.
tell you
My
that
husband has
New
a very
Zealand's the
good
best.
saying. He says, because we lived there for 10 years, because I took my American husband back there, and my son was raised there for 10 years. And my husband says, when he comes back here and they say, how could you leave New Zealand, you know, the most beautiful country in the world, and all the environment and everything, and my husband has a saying, you can't eat the scenery.
Yeah, you got to live,
You can't
people.
eat the scenery.
You know, $8 a gallon of gas. You know, the taxes are through the roof. You think you're taxed here, people. You ain't seen nothing. You ain't seen nothing. But the indoctrination is, you know, I grew up believing in socialism. I thought the welfare state was the way to go. You shouldn't have guns. 66% taxation was just fine and dandy because I didn't have to pay it. All this kind of stuff, you know. It's a beautiful country, but it'll only be free if you get free.
Right.
You know. So I just want to say before I take another question, my son James and his friend Dylan are over there. Look, at least get that. Take it to that. Got 1 million views on Amazon Prime in 1 month. That exposes the Marxist and Islamist infiltration of your Congress. It's,
How long is that going to be on Amazon?
well, I don't know.
They
I don't
have a
know.
way of taking things off.
Yeah, I know. It
I
was
would
taken
say-
down recently. That's
Yeah.
why I get a copy here. I've got some of my books here as well, which I'll sign for you. But yeah, so that's what I make my living off. Basically, I make documentaries. I do public speaking. This is what I do full time.
You do a very good job.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
he does.
you know, well, I'm reading commie websites 14 hours a day, people. I'm taking one for you, all right? Because they are tedious people, I tell you. Oh, you first, ma'am, then. Yes.
Go ahead. I was saying, what did you do for a living before you did this?
Well, very logically, see, this is very common. I was a baker. I baked bread and bagels and sourdough and stuff like that. You know, very logical progression there. Baker in New Zealand to an anti-communist in America. People do it all the time. So,
Glenn Beck.
yeah. Well, Glenn, I'm not trying to boast, but Glenn said he started doing his chalkboards for my information because he's getting my information. He put it together.
I believe that.
You know, I was releasing the stuff from New Zealand, but so he owes me a favour, but I owe him one because there was a young lady from Pennsylvania who was studying at Otago University in New Zealand in 2011 and was listening to a Glenn Beck podcast, and that young lady heard him talk about me, how I was doing a lot of good work from New Zealand. So she looked me up online and she sent me $30, and that's how I met my wife Victoria. So it was a bit of a, you know, KiwiHusbands.com. Yeah, but any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So did New Zealand allow guns at one point and then they were banned? And I know that happened in Australia.
Well, look, even before I was born, this was nearly 30 years ago now. Look, guns were always very heavily restricted. Like, you couldn't have handguns. My dad used to work for the Bank of New Zealand, and As a kid, he would take me in as a treat into the vault, and he'd open this box and there had a handgun in there. It's the only place you would ever see one. And no one else could have them. You could have a rifle or a shotgun to go rabbit hunting or duck hunting or whatever, but you couldn't use it to defend yourself. If you shot someone invading your home, you'd be tried for murder. You might get acquitted, but it would cost you a lot of money. And now Jacinda Ardern, the Marxist, has used that tragedy in Christchurch to basically take all the automatic guns off everybody. And just by the way, that shooter, Brenton Tarrant, who was from Australia by the way, was not a Trump supporter. He was a pro-Russian national Bolshevik, which is a cross between Nazism and communism. And he said he deliberately did that to cause a civil war in the United States, because he thought the left would come after the guns and the conservatives would not give them up, and you'd start a civil war which would take America out of contention so Russia could then do whatever it wanted. And I wrote an article about this on the Epoch Times. I write a lot of stuff for the Epoch Times, and that article is banned in New Zealand. You get an $100,000 fine or up to 18 years in jail for even distributing his manifesto.
Wow.
You talk about freedom, First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights. We have none of that stuff, people. Now, it's not a tyranny there because we're a neighbourhood, you know. But if we had the same laws we have in New Zealand in a big country, we would be a tyranny. Straight up. There is no protection. Nothing that you have. You're so exceptional here, people. Nowhere else has the right to carry guns like you do. Nobody else has the First Amendment rights like you do. You know, it's just, you're the light of the world as far as freedom goes, people. You really are. Well, this is a really weird thing. When they take away the guns, this will shock and surprise you, the criminals don't hand them in. So the gangs have got as many guns as you would like. And there's whole towns in New Zealand that are basically intimidated by the gangs, the drug gangs. You know, because you can't stand up against them. They're armed, the police don't do anything. Look, that mosque shooting in Christchurch, that happened within 1 mile of the central police station in Christchurch with 500 cops in it.
Wow.
There was not one cop turned up in 28 minutes, people. The guy could drive away across town, went to another mosque and shot up another 7 people and still no cops turned up. The only reason he got caught is because one of the Muslims jumped him and chased him out, and 2 off-duty cops who were out from out of town saw his car and pulled him over, and he was disarmed by that point. So you give up your protection and the cops are going to look after you. No, they don't. As a gentleman said, sometimes the cops are a little bit intimidated by these bad guys too, and they'd rather turn up after the fact than while it's still going on. Thanks very much. You know, so look, you know, I'm here because I love New Zealand, but I'm not going to save my country if we don't save America, folks. That's just the reality. You know, if I thought I could hide out New Zealand and stay safe, I'd do it. But, you know, the minute America goes down, the Chinese have us in a heartbeat. They're already knocking on our door. They're already buying up our properties. They're buying up our members of parliament. The Conservatives in New Zealand found out that one of their members of parliament, who was of Chinese birth, was a tutor at the Chinese spy school. Right? This is a guy who's going to trade delegations with our cabinet ministers to China. It turns out he was an instructor at the Chinese spy school, and the Conservatives said, oh, that's all right. It's just like he was working for our intelligence agency, really. It's like having one of your members of Congress trained by the KGB and going negotiating with, sitting next to President Trump when he negotiates with Putin. And nothing happens. Nothing. Zero. You're still there. You'll probably get promoted to cabinet soon. So this is, you know how tough things here are in the States, but it's nothing compared to what it is anywhere else. But maybe, I know there's another gentleman got to speak, and I'm listening forward to hearing his story, but please, if you've got to go, come and see James and Dylan. get some books, some DVDs. Get a copy that if you already gone, take a DVD to your church or give it to your favourite Liberal uncle for Christmas. You know, just drive them crazy. It will knock your socks off. If you're in a war, the first thing you've got to know is who your enemy is. Because we don't, people. Most Americans have no idea of the things I've talked to you about today. None whatsoever. Even most conservatives don't. And I've just scratched the surface today, people. So please get the DVD, get some books, take them to your church, and I'm happy to address more groups in this area because this is my home. I love the area, and I want to see it turn out big time for Trump in 2020, folks. Absolute record setting out of this county. That's what I want to see. So thank you very much.